So in the last video, we learned the basics of using MakeBeat to create our own rhythms out of little bits of sound files. In this video, I want to turn to some more advanced applications and continue this exploration of pattern sequencing. So we're going to look at how to take those beat strings that we created and use string operations in Python to actually transform those strings and by extension transform the rhythms. We're going to look at using lists in conjunction with MakeBeat to take more than one sound file to be able to create rhythms out of many different sound files at the same time. And we're also going to look at loops to take these rhythms that we create and allow them to repeat over and over and over again. Now let's start with these string operations. I want to look at three of these in particular that let us do some basic things to strings to transform the rhythms that we've created into new rhythms. The first one is reverse string. So if I pass a string into a reverse string, it'll take it and it'll just spit it out to me backwards. So if my input were 0 plus, my output would be plus 0. The next one is shuffle string. So shuffle string just randomizes the order of characters in my string. So if I had 0 minus minus 0, it might randomize it to be minus 0, 0 minus. Or it might randomize it to be minus minus 0, 0. Or 0, 0 minus minus. Each time you call shuffle string, it's going to do a different random shuffling of all those characters in the string. And the third one that I want to look at is replace string. So this takes a character that might appear in the string already, takes every instance of it and replaces it with a new character. So for example, if my string were 0 plus 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 0 minus minus minus, and I wanted to search for all occurrences of my old character plus and replace it with a new character minus, then it would turn this into 0 minus 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 0 minus minus minus, taking basically all instances that it found of the plus sign and turning them into minus signs. So it would turn those ties into rests. Finally, I just want to remind you of something that we've looked at already briefly, which is the print function in Python, which will print the contents of a string to the console. And we're going to be using that a lot in the demos I'm about to do, just so that we can keep track of what's actually happening to these strings. We can see the strings and not just see them in the workstation view, but actually see the strings themselves as they're getting transformed. So let's go ahead and go back to EarSketch. And here's the example that we were working with in the last video. So I want to keep this, but I want to add on subsequent measures of my track different transformations of this basic string that we have. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to redo this string as a variable here so that it's easier to access it over and over again. So beat string equals 0 minus 0, 0 minus 0, 0 minus 0 plus 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 0 plus plus plus. And then here, instead of typing in that whole string, I can just type in beat string. And I'll go ahead and print this out so that we can see it on the console. So let's just do that to start. I'll go ahead and run this. You can see that it's printed on the console down here. And of course, we have the same music with that clap sound that we did in the last video. So now I want to do that same string, but backwards. So I'm going to say beat string equals reverse string of beat string. So this reverses the string and then assigns it to our beat string variable. So the old string is replaced by the new reversed string. And then I'm just going to copy and paste these two lines down here. And I can go ahead. I still want it to be the same clap sound on track 1, but I wanted to start in measure 2 now instead of measure 1, so that first we have the original string and then we have the reversed version of it. And then I want to print that out again so that I can see it backwards. So I'll run my script, and now you can see we have the original string on the console and the backwards version of it. And if I come here, it's like a little palindrome, my original string and then the backwards version. Now let's go ahead and shuffle the string. So I can copy all three of these lines actually if I want to make things faster. Instead of reverse string now, we're going to take that reverse string we just made and we're going to shuffle it. And I'm going to have this start on measure 3 instead of measure 2. So again, we've taken the result of shuffling the string, stored it in our beat string variable, then we're using that to make the beat on track 1, measure 3, and then we're printing it to the console again. So I can go ahead and run this, And you can see the result down here. Now, every time I run this, that final beat string printed in the console is going to be a little different because each time it's randomizing the order of these characters. And if I come here, you can see the results. And then finally, I want to do a replace string operation. So I'm going to do replace string here. And I'm still going to do it on my beat string, but I need to give it an old character. In this case, I'll do the plus sign like we did in the slide, and the new character, which is going to be the minus sign. And they're both inside of quotes, as you can see. So every tie that I have is going to get replaced by a rest. And I want this to start on measure 4 of track 1. And again, I'll print that out. So you can see at the very end here, there's no plus signs anymore. They've all turned into minus signs. If I listen to that, you'll see, you can even see this here at the end, all of these just are lasting a single 16th note here at the end. And you'll be able to hear that when I play this back as well. Play that one more time. So you can hear the kind of the reverb from that clap sound is gone in that last time because I've turned all those ties into rests. So that's how to use some basic string operations to transform your strings and your rhythms in different ways using some simple operations. What I want to talk about now is the notion of lists. So we've been using variables up to this point, and you can think of a variable as kind of a bucket that you store something in. So like in that last example, it was storing beat strings. And as I kept on changing the beat strings, I was actually updating what was in my bucket, my beat string variable. A list is where you want to have a bunch of things that are related to each other, and you want to store them together with a single variable name. So for instance, a bunch of sound files that might be related to each other, you might want to store together as a list. And we can do this in Python by defining a variable, so I can give it a name just like I did with any other variable. I do an assignment statement with an equals the same way, and then I define, instead of a single value, I'm defining a list of values. So we start with a square bracket here, and we end with a square bracket. In the middle, I put all my values, and I separate them by commas. So here I have different sounds from the library. Hip-hop muted guitar 1, hip-hop muted guitar 2, hip-hop muted guitar 3, hip-hop muted guitar 4. So I have 4 items in my list, and each of those are being stored in a different slot. You can almost think of it as a bookshelf. And in computer science, we often, for all kinds of reasons, like to start numbering things at 0 instead of 1. So we start counting at 1. So slot 0 has hip-hop muted guitar 1. Slot 1 has the next sound. Slot 2 has the next sound. And slot 3 has the next sound. And then if I were to ever want to reference one of these slots, I simply use that same bracket syntax. So I give my variable name, beats, and then I use the square brackets, and inside I give the index I want to use, the list index, 0, 1, 2, or 3, and it returns the value from that particular slot. So I want to show you one very practical way to use lists, and that's in conjunction with make beat. So I have this list of these hip-hop muted guitar sounds, and then what I can do in my beat string, my call to make beat, is 2 things a little bit different. First, instead of referencing a single sound here as the sound I want to use, I'm referencing this entire list of beats. So I'm saying I don't just want to use one sound, I want to use this whole list. And then in my beat string, instead of just using 0, plus, and minus, I'm using all the different list indices I want to use. So every time I use a 0 character, I'm pulling out the sound that's stored in slot 0. Every time I use the 1 character, I'm pulling out the sound stored in slot 1. Every time I use the 2 character, the sound from slot 2, and so on with this sound in slot 3 every time I use the 3 character. So let's go ahead and look at how this works in practice. I'll go back to our EarSketch script, and I'm going to start something on track 2 here. So it complements the drum pattern that we've been building on track 1. So I'll define my beats variable. I'll do an assignment statement, a square bracket, and I'll go ahead and find all of these hip-hop muted guitar sounds. So number 1 I'll paste in, then I put in a comma. So now I'm going on to my next list element. 2, comma, 3, comma, and 4. And then I close that with a closing square bracket. So now I've defined my list of beats. And now I want to call make beat using my list of beats on track 2, starting in measure 1, and then I'm going to build a beat string here. I've lost count here of how many characters I have. I want 16, so it fills the total measure here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's one beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another beat. So I've got 3 beats. I need to do one more beat here. And that should be a whole measure. And I'll run my script and come over here, and you see I've got a measure of music here on track 2. Let me go ahead and solo this so you can hear it on its own. And you heard all the different sounds coming in from the different hip-hop MIDI guitar sound files, depending on which number I was using, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And then we can listen to this together. So one thing isn't quite right about these two tracks together, which is that track 1 goes on for 4 measures. Track 2 only lasts for 1 measure. So if I wanted to fix that, I could copy and paste this makebeat command 4 times and change the measure numbers it's starting on, for, once for measure 1, once for measure 2, once for 3, and once for 4. And that would be fine. It would take me a minute. It would be okay. But then what if I wanted to do this for 16 measures or 32 measures or 128 measures? That would start to get really tedious to do. And so that brings me to the final concept that I wanted to introduce in this lecture, which is the notion of loops. And we're going to use them specifically with makebeat. So a loop in Python or any programming language basically tells you to repeat one or more lines of code a bunch of times. And so this is what a loop looks like in Python. We use a for statement. So we say for some variable name. So measure here is a variable name. In range, and then we give it some range. And so what happens here, and then I do a colon, and then all the stuff I want to repeat here needs to be tabbed in. You can't actually hit a bunch of spaces. It'll get very upset at you if you use a bunch of spaces. You always need to hit the tab key. And everything that's tabbed in underneath that for loop will be repeated. Measure is called the loop index here. And each time the loop repeats, measure takes on a different value as designated by that range command. So the first time, measure is going to equal 5, because that's my first argument there. The next time, it's going to be 6. The next time, it's going to be 7. The next time, it's going to be 8. And then when it gets to 9, it says, OK, that's my stopping condition for the loop. So it never actually takes on the value of 9. This loop runs 4 times, once for 5, once for 6, once for 7, and once for 8. So this is going to repeat these 5 times. And the measure that we're actually using here to say, well, what measure do I want to put this makebeat on, is changing each time according to that loop index. The first time it's going to put it on measure 5. The next time on measure 6. The next time on measure 7. The next time on measure 8. So you can see how this is very flexible. It helps us repeat things in ways that helps us write a lot less code than if we copied and pasted and modified each function call out manually. So let's go ahead and do this in our code. So I have my makebeat call here, and before that I need to insert a for loop. So for measure in range. In this case, I wanted to start at measure 1 and end with measure 4. So I say measure range 1, 5. So I know that then measure is going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then here I'm going to hit the tab key to tab in my makebeat so that it knows that that's part of the for loop. And instead of it always starting on measure 1 here, I'm going to use my loop index, the measure variable. So the first time measure will be 1, the second time it'll be 2, the next time it'll be 3, and the final iteration it'll be 4. So now if I hit run script, you can see here that my guitar riff on track 2 is repeating 4 times on my 4 measures. So we can listen to that. So to review what we've covered in this video, we've looked at using makebeat and beat strings in the context of string operations, ways to do things to transform our strings by reversing and shuffling or replacing characters in them, so that we're in turn transforming the rhythms that we've created. We've looked at using lists with makebeat to do something where we can actually create a single beat string that references a lot of different sound files. And we've also looked at using loops with MakeBeat so that we can take a single MakeBeat function call and repeat it a bunch of times to make our rhythm repeat over and over again in a song. What we're going to do in the next video is look at another key area of the EarSketch API, which is how to use effects.